The flight from New York to Lagos took 14 hours, but Michael Richards barely slept. His mind was already home, imagining the look on Rita's face when she opened the door and saw him standing there 3 weeks early. He pictured his children screaming with joy, his mother-in-law covering her mouth in shock, the neighbors gathering to welcome him back. He had worked 16-hour shifts for 8 months straight, saving every extra dollar, sleeping in a shared apartment with 5 other men just to send more money home. This surprise was supposed to be his reward. Their reward. The culmination of sacrifice that would remind everyone why he left in the first place. But the taxi ride from the airport felt different than he expected. The streets were familiar, yet something in his chest tightened as they approached his neighborhood. He told himself it was just exhaustion, just the disorientation of being back after so long. The driver asked if he was visiting or returning home. Michael smiled and said, "Returning home." The words tasted strange in his mouth, like speaking a language he once knew fluently but had somehow forgotten. When the taxi stopped in front of his house, Michael paid quickly and stepped out, his luggage heavy in his hands. The gate was unlocked. That was the first thing he noticed. Paul, the security man he had personally hired and paid generously to protect his family, always kept that gate locked. Michael had sent explicit instructions about security. Lock the gate. Watch the compound. Keep my family safe. Yet here it stood, wide open like an invitation to anything and anyone. He pushed it open slowly, the metal hinges creaking softly. The compound was quiet. Too quiet. It was 3 in the afternoon, a time when his children should have been playing outside, when Rita should have been in the kitchen preparing dinner, when the sounds of home should have filled the air. Instead, there was only silence, thick and suffocating, the kind of silence that whispers secrets before you are ready to hear them. Michael walked toward the front door, his heart pounding now, not with excitement, but with something else, something he could not yet name. The door was also unlocked. He turned the handle and stepped inside. The living room looked the same. The furniture he bought before he left. The television he paid for with 3 months of overtime. The family photos on the wall, frozen smiles from a time that suddenly felt like a lifetime ago. He heard a sound then, faint but unmistakable. A woman's laugh. Rita's laugh. Coming from upstairs. From their bedroom. Michael's hands began to shake. He set his luggage down carefully, as if making noise would shatter whatever fragile reality he was still clinging to. He moved toward the stairs, each step deliberate, each breath measured. The laugh came again, followed by a man's voice. Low. Familiar. Paul's voice. Michael climbed the stairs like a man walking toward his own execution. His mind raced through explanations, desperate justifications. Maybe Paul was fixing something in the bedroom. Maybe Rita was just showing him a broken window, a leaking pipe. Maybe there was a logical reason why the security man Michael paid to stay outside was inside his house, inside his bedroom, making his wife laugh in the middle of a Wednesday afternoon. He reached the bedroom door. It was slightly open. Through the gap, he could see them. Rita, the woman he married 7 years ago in a church filled with singing and promises. Rita, the mother of his 2 children. Rita, whose monthly allowance he never missed sending, whose requests he always fulfilled, whose comfort he worked himself to exhaustion to provide. She was in their bed, and beside her, shirtless and comfortable, as if he belonged there, was Paul. They were not fixing anything. They were not discussing security. They were lying together, her head on his chest, his arm around her shoulders, both of them relaxed in a way that spoke of routine, of familiarity, of something that had been happening long before today. Michael pushed the door open. The hinges did not creak this time. They swung silently, dramatically, like a curtain rising on a stage where the performance had already begun without him. Rita looked up first. Her face went from contentment to confusion to absolute terror in less than 3 seconds. Paul sat up so fast he nearly fell off the bed, his eyes wide, his mouth opening and closing like a fish drowning in air. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The world had stopped spinning, and all 3 of them were suspended in that terrible silence, waiting for gravity to remember how to work. Then Michael said, very quietly, very calmly, in a voice that did not sound like his own, "I came home early to surprise my family." Rita scrambled off the bed, pulling a wrapper around herself, her hands shaking so violently she could barely hold the fabric. "Michael," she stammered. "Michael, I can explain." This is not what it looks like. Michael looked at her, then at Paul, then back at her. His face was completely expressionless, a mask of nothing, because underneath that mask was everything. Rage and heartbreak and humiliation and disbelief all crashing together like waves against rocks. He did not shout. He did not lunge forward. He simply stood there, his luggage still downstairs, his surprise ruined, his marriage shattered, his trust obliterated. And in that moment, Michael Richards understood something profound and terrible. He had been working in America to build a home. But while he was gone, strangers had moved into it. And the cruelest part was that one of those strangers wore his wife's face. Before we go deeper into this story, let me tell you something. They said stories like this do not matter anymore. They said Storycave would never reach even 1,000 subscribers. But you are here. You are listening. You are proof that truth still matters, that real stories still move hearts. Subscribe to Storycave right now. Hit that button. Let us prove them wrong together. Let us keep these stories alive. Alright, let us continue. Michael did not move from the doorway. His feet felt rooted to the floor, as if the weight of betrayal had turned his bones to stone. Rita was still talking, her words tumbling out in a frantic rush, explanations that made no sense, excuses that dissolved the moment they touched air. Paul had finally found his shirt and was pulling it on with trembling hands, his eyes fixed on the floor, unable to meet Michael's gaze. But Michael was not listening to Rita's voice anymore. He was listening to memory. He was remembering the day he left for America, standing in this same house, holding Rita's hands, promising her that everything would be okay. She had cried that morning, begging him not to go, saying she could not manage without him. He had wiped her tears and told her, "I am doing this for us. For our children. For our future. 2 years, maybe 3, and we will have everything we ever dreamed of." 2 years had turned into 8 months so far, but Michael had kept every promise. Every single one. He sent money home like clockwork. First week of every month, 40% of his paycheck went straight to Rita's account. School fees for the children. Food. Electricity. Medical bills. New furniture. Clothing. He even sent extra for Rita's small business, the one she said she wanted to start selling fabrics at the market. He sent money for Paul's salary, money to fix the roof, money for emergencies that seemed to appear every other week. He worked construction jobs in freezing New York winters, his hands cracked and bleeding by the end of each shift. He worked night shifts at a warehouse, loading boxes until his back screamed for rest. He lived with 5 other Nigerian men in a 2-bedroom apartment in the Bronx, sleeping on a mattress on the floor, eating rice and stew that lasted for days because he could not afford to waste anything. Every dollar he saved was a dollar for home. Every sacrifice was for Rita and the children. He called home every Sunday evening, religiously. Sometimes Rita answered. Sometimes she did not. When she did answer, her voice always sounded distant, distracted, like he was interrupting something important. She would tell him the children were fine, that everything was okay, that she missed him. But there was something in her tone, something flat and rehearsed, that Michael tried not to notice because noticing would mean admitting something was wrong. There were signs. Of course there were signs. Michael just chose not to see them. Like the time he called at midnight, his time, which was early morning in Nigeria, and Rita did not pick up. He called 5 times. Nothing. When he finally reached her hours later, she said she had been sleeping deeply, that she did not hear the phone. But her voice sounded too awake, too alert, like someone who had been up for hours. Or the time he sent money for a new generator and called a week later to ask if it was working well. Rita hesitated, just a fraction of a second too long, before saying yes, it works perfectly. But when Michael asked his neighbor Mr. Okafor to check on his family, Mr. Okafor mentioned casually that he had not seen any new generator. When Michael asked Rita about it, she became angry. "Why are you checking up on me like I am a child? Do you not trust me?" Michael apologized. He always apologized, because doubting her felt like betraying the foundation of everything they had built. Then there were the photos she stopped sending. Before, Rita used to send pictures of the children every week. Their school uniforms, their homework, birthday parties. But slowly, the photos stopped coming. When Michael asked, she said her phone camera was broken. When he sent money to fix it, she said she was too busy to take pictures. Too busy with what? He wanted to ask, but he did not. because asking questions from 4,000 miles away felt like trying to hold water in his hands. Michael remembered the last conversation he had with Rita before he decided to come home early. It was 3 weeks ago. He had just received a bonus from his warehouse job, a decent amount that could cover his flight ticket and still leave enough for the family. He was so excited, so eager to surprise her, that he almost told her right there on the phone. But something stopped him. Some instinct, some small voice in the back of his mind that whispered, "Wait. Just wait." So he did not tell her. He did not tell anyone. Not his mother, not his siblings, not even his closest friend. He bought the ticket in secret, packed his bags in silence, and left New York without a single person in Nigeria knowing he was coming. At the time, he thought he was just being romantic, creating the perfect surprise. Now, standing in this doorway, watching his wife scramble for lies, he realized that instinct had been trying to protect him from this exact moment. Paul finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Oga Michael, I am sorry. I am so sorry." Michael turned his gaze to Paul slowly, deliberately. Paul was 26 years old, a young man from a village 3 hours away who had come to the city looking for work. Michael had hired him 8 months ago, just before leaving for America. He paid Paul well, far more than the average security wage. He trusted Paul to watch over his home, to protect his wife and children, to be the man of the house in his absence. And this was how Paul repaid that trust. By climbing into his bed, by touching his wife, by becoming comfortable in a space that was never meant for him. Rita stepped forward, her voice rising in desperation. "Michael, please listen to me. This only happened because you left. You left us alone. You abandoned us for months. What did you expect me to do? Sit here like a statue waiting for you?" Michael finally spoke again, his voice still terrifyingly calm. "I expected you to be my wife." The words hung in the air like a verdict. Rita opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. What could she say? What explanation could possibly make sense of what he had walked into? She had been caught, not in a moment of weakness, not in a one-time mistake, but in comfort, in routine, in a betrayal that had clearly been unfolding for weeks, maybe months. Michael looked around the bedroom, really looked at it for the first time since entering. The bedsheets were new, ones he had not bought. There was a man's wristwatch on the nightstand that was not his. A second pillow on what used to be his side of the bed, worn down from use. Small details that screamed the truth louder than any confession ever could. This was not an affair that had just begun. This was a life that had been built while he was away, a parallel existence where Michael was nothing more than a bank account that deposited money every month. He turned and walked out of the bedroom without another word. Rita called after him, her voice breaking into sobs, but Michael did not stop. He walked down the stairs, picked up his luggage, and stood in the living room, looking at the photos on the wall one more time. His wedding day, his children's birthdays, family gatherings. All of it felt like fiction now, like a story someone had told him about people who did not really exist. The front door opened, and his 2 children ran inside, home from school. They froze when they saw him, their faces lighting up with shock and joy. "Daddy," his daughter screamed, running toward him. Michael caught her in his arms, holding her tight, breathing in the smell of her hair, feeling her small heart beat against his chest. His son, quieter and more reserved, walked over slowly and hugged his leg. For a moment, Michael felt whole again. For a moment, the betrayal upstairs did not matter because his children were here, real and innocent and untouched by the ugliness their mother had created. But then he heard footsteps on the stairs, and reality crashed back down. Rita appeared, her face streaked with tears, her wrapper clutched tightly around her body. Paul was nowhere to be seen. He had likely escaped through the back door like the coward he was. The children looked between their parents, confusion dawning on their faces. "Why is Mommy crying?" his daughter asked. Michael set her down gently and knelt to their level. "Go to your room for a little while," he said softly. "Daddy needs to talk to Mommy." They hesitated, but eventually obeyed, walking slowly toward their room, glancing back with worried eyes. When they were gone, Michael stood up and faced Rita. She started to speak, but he raised his hand, stopping her. "Not now," he said. "Not yet. I need time to think. But know this, Rita. Everything I did for you. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every moment I spent away from my children, I did it because I loved you. And this is what you did with that love." He picked up his luggage and walked toward the guest room. Rita did not follow. She simply stood there, crying, knowing that words could not fix what had been broken. And Michael, for the first time in 8 months, was finally home. But home did not feel like home anymore. It felt like a graveyard for everything he used to believe in. Michael did not sleep that night. He lay on the guest room bed, staring at the ceiling, watching shadows dance across the white paint as car headlights passed outside. The house was silent except for the occasional creak of old wood settling, sounds that used to comfort him but now felt like the groaning of something dying. His mind replayed the scene in the bedroom over and over, each repetition adding new details he had missed the first time. The way Rita's hand had been resting so naturally on Paul's chest. The way neither of them had scrambled immediately, as if they needed a moment to remember they were doing something wrong. The way his own bedroom had smelled different, like cheap cologne and secrets. Around 3 in the morning, Michael heard footsteps outside his door. Soft, hesitant. Rita's footsteps. She knocked quietly. "Michael, please. Can we talk?" He did not answer. The footsteps retreated. Michael closed his eyes and tried to summon anger, the kind of rage that would make sense of this situation, that would give him permission to explode and break things and scream until his throat was raw. But the anger would not come. Instead, there was only a hollow ache, a grief so profound it felt physical, like someone had reached into his chest and carved out everything that used to beat there. Morning came slowly. Michael showered, dressed, and walked into the kitchen. Rita was already there, preparing breakfast with shaking hands. She looked like she had not slept either. Her eyes were swollen, her face puffy, her movements mechanical. When she saw him, she froze, the spatula hovering over the frying pan. "The children are still sleeping," she said quietly. "I thought we could talk before they wake up." Michael poured himself a cup of tea and sat at the dining table. Rita brought him a plate of fried eggs and bread, setting it down carefully, as if he might shatter from any sudden movement. She sat across from him, her hands folded tightly in her lap, her eyes fixed on the table. "Say what you need to say," Michael said, his voice neutral, giving nothing away. Rita took a shaky breath. "Michael, I know what you saw. I know how it looked. But you have to understand, these past 8 months have been so hard. I have been alone, raising the children by myself, dealing with everything. The loneliness was eating me alive. I needed someone. I needed to feel like I mattered to someone who was actually here." Michael set down his teacup slowly. "So you chose Paul." "It was not planned," Rita said quickly. "It just happened. He was here every day, helping with things, talking to me, listening to me. You were so far away, always working, always tired when you called. I felt like I lost my husband." Michael looked at her, really looked at her, and saw someone he did not recognize. "When did it start?" he asked. "The affair. When did it start?" Rita hesitated, her eyes darting away. "Does it matter?" "Yes," Michael said firmly. "It matters. Because I need to know how long you have been lying to me. How many times I called, and you pretended everything was fine while he was there, in my house, touching you. How many times I sent money that you probably spent on him." Rita's face crumpled. "It started 3 months ago," she whispered. "Maybe 4. I do not remember exactly. For months." Michael let that sink in. For months of betrayal. For months of lies. For months where every "I love you" she said to him on the phone was poison wrapped in sugar. He thought about all the video calls where she had smiled and waved, the children beside her, playing the role of faithful wife. Had Paul been there, just outside the camera frame, waiting for Michael to hang up so he could take his place? "Did he sleep here?" Michael asked, his voice still eerily calm. "In our bed, while the children were in the house." Rita did not answer, but her silence was confession enough. Michael stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. Rita flinched. He walked to the window and looked out at the compound, at the gate Paul was supposed to be guarding right now but was not, because Paul was likely hiding somewhere, too ashamed or too afraid to show his face. "Where is he now?" Michael asked. "I do not know," Rita said. "He left last night. He has not come back." Michael turned to face her. "Did you love him?" The question seemed to catch Rita off guard. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "No," she finally said. "No, I did not love him. It was just comfort. Just someone to talk to. Just comfort," Michael repeated, tasting the words like acid. "You destroyed our marriage for just comfort. You destroyed it first," Rita shot back, her voice suddenly sharp, defensive. "You left me, Michael. You left me alone in this house with 2 children and bills and problems and loneliness. You chose America over us. You chose money over your family. So do not stand there and act like you are innocent in this. Michael felt something crack inside him then. Not anger, but something colder, sharper. I chose America, he said slowly, so you could eat 3 meals a day. So our children could go to a good school. So you could start the business you said you wanted. So we could build the life you begged me for when we got married. Everything I did for us. And you repaid me by inviting another man into my bed. Rita started crying again, her shoulders shaking. I am sorry, she sobbed. I am so sorry, Michael. I made a mistake. Please forgive me. Please. We can fix this. We can go to counseling, to church, to anyone who can help us. Please do not throw away 7 years of marriage because of one mistake. One mistake, Michael said quietly. 4 months is not one mistake, Rita. 4 months is a choice you made every single day. 4 months is you waking up and deciding that I did not matter. That our vows did not matter. That our children did not matter. He walked toward the door, needing air, needing space, needing to be anywhere, but in this kitchen where lies tasted like breakfast. Rita stood up quickly. Where are you going? To think, Michael said. To figure out what I am going to do next. Michael, please, Rita grabbed his arm. Please do not leave. Do not abandon us again. He looked down at her hand on his arm, then up at her face. I never abandoned you, Rita. I worked myself to exhaustion for you. But you abandoned me the moment you let another man into our life. There is a difference. He pulled his arm free gently and walked out. Outside, the morning sun was already hot, burning away the cool night air. Michael walked through the compound, through the gate Paul had left unlocked, and out into the street. Neighbors were starting their day, sweeping their compounds, opening their shops, living their normal lives while Michael's life crumbled into dust. He walked for an hour, maybe more, through streets he used to know by heart, but now felt foreign. He thought about calling his mother, but what would he say? He thought about calling his pastor, but what advice could anyone give that would make sense of this? He thought about getting on the next flight back to America and never looking back, but his children's faces appeared in his mind, innocent and confused, and he knew he could not abandon them, even if their mother had abandoned him. Eventually, Michael found himself at a small bar, the kind that opened early for men who needed to drink away their problems before noon. He sat at a corner table and ordered a beer. The bartender, an older man with kind eyes, set the bottle down and said, "Woman trouble?" Michael almost laughed. "How did you know?" The bartender shrugged. "Only 2 things make a man drink this early: money or women. And you look like a man who just found out something he wished he never knew." Michael took a long drink and nodded. "You are right." The bartender wiped down the counter and said, "My father used to tell me something. He said when a woman betrays you, she does not just break your heart. She breaks your memory. Every good moment you had together becomes tainted. Every smile becomes a lie. Every I love you becomes a question. That is the real pain. Not just losing the future, but losing the past too." Michael stared at his beer bottle, at the condensation dripping down the brown glass, and realized the bartender was right. He could not remember a single happy moment with Rita now without wondering if it was real. Their wedding day, was she already capable of this kind of betrayal even then? The birth of their children, did she hold them and feel the same love he felt, or was something already broken inside her? Every memory had been poisoned, and he did not know how to get them back. He finished his beer, paid, and walked back home. When he arrived, the compound was full of people. Rita's mother, her sisters, her aunts. They all turned to look at him when he entered, their faces a mixture of concern and accusation. Michael knew immediately what had happened. Rita had called them. She had assembled her defense, her witnesses, her jury. This was no longer a private matter. This was now a family affair. And Michael, standing alone against a wall of women ready to defend their daughter, their sister, their niece, realized that the confrontation was far from over. In fact, it had only just begun. The living room felt smaller with all those women in it. Rita's mother, Mama Radana, sat in the center like a queen holding court, her wrapper tied high and tight, her face set in that expression Nigerian mothers wear when they have already decided who is right and who is wrong. Rita's 2 sisters flanked her on either side, arms crossed, eyes hard. 3 aunties filled the remaining chairs, whispering among themselves, throwing glances at Michael that ranged from suspicious to openly hostile. Michael stood near the doorway, still holding his car keys, unsure whether to enter fully or turn around and leave. The decision was made for him when Mama Adana's voice cut through the murmuring like a machete through grass. Michael, come and sit down. We need to talk about this situation. Situation. As if his wife's affair was something as simple as a disagreement over household expenses. Michael walked slowly into the room and sat in the single armchair across from the jury of women. Rita sat beside her mother, her eyes red and swollen, tissue clutched in her hand, the perfect picture of victimhood. Michael recognized the performance. He had seen it before, years ago, when Rita wanted something from him and tears were the fastest route to yes. Mama Adana leaned forward, her voice measured and controlled. Michael, Rita has told us what happened. She has told us about your surprise return and what you saw. She has confessed everything to us, and she is deeply sorry. But as her mother, as someone who has been married for 35 years, I need to tell you something important. Marriage is not easy. Marriage requires forgiveness. Marriage requires understanding. Michael said nothing. He simply looked at Mama Adana, waiting for the rest of the speech he knew was coming. Rita made a mistake, Mama Adana continued. A terrible mistake, yes. But you also made mistakes, Michael. You left your wife alone for 8 months. 8 months. No woman should have to suffer that kind of loneliness. No woman should have to raise children by herself while her husband is in another country. You created the situation that led to this. You pushed her into the arms of another man. One of the aunties nodded vigorously. That is true. A hungry woman will eat whatever food is placed in front of her. You left her starving for attention. Michael felt something hot rise in his chest, but he kept his voice level. I left to provide for this family. I left so Rita could have money for food, for rent, for the children's school fees. I left because she told me we needed more. That our life was not enough. That she wanted better. So I went to America and worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3, to give her better. And this is how she repaid me. But money is not everything, Rita's younger sister interjected. Money cannot hold her at night. Money cannot talk to her when she is scared. Money cannot make her feel like a woman. Michael turned his gaze to her. So she should sleep with the security guard instead? That is the solution? The room went silent. Even the aunties stopped whispering. Rita let out a fresh sob, her shoulders shaking dramatically. Mama Adana's face hardened. You will not speak to my daughter that way, she said coldly. You will not humiliate her in front of her family. Yes, she made a mistake. But your tone, your lack of forgiveness, that is also a sin. The Bible says we should forgive 70 times 7. Michael almost laughed. So I should forgive her 490 times for sleeping with another man in my bed? Is that what you are telling me? I am telling you, Mama Adana said, rising to her feet, that if you walk away from this marriage, you are the one who will be blamed. Not her. You. People will say you were a wicked husband who abandoned his wife and then refused to forgive her when she stumbled. They will say you were heartless. They will say you did not fight for your family. Is that what you want? Is that the legacy you want to leave your children? Michael looked around the room at all these women, these defenders of betrayal, and he realized something profound. They were not here to seek truth. They were here to protect Rita's reputation, to salvage what could be salvaged, to make sure that when this story was told in the village, at church, at family gatherings, Rita would emerge as the victim and Michael as the villain. Facts did not matter. Vows did not matter. Faithfulness did not matter. What mattered was appearances, family honor, and making sure the shame landed on the right person. Where is Paul? Michael asked suddenly. Why is he not here to face what he did? The room shifted uncomfortably. Rita looked down at her hands. Mama Adana cleared her throat. Paul is irrelevant. He is just a security guard. A nobody. This is between you and your wife. No, Michael said, standing up. Paul is very relevant. Because Paul is the man my wife chose over me. Paul is the man who I paid to protect my home, and instead he violated it. Paul is the man who looked me in the eye every time I video called home, standing in the background, probably laughing at me inside. So where is he? He left, Rita whispered. He packed his things and left yesterday. I do not know where he went. Convenient, Michael said. Very convenient. He gets to disappear while you sit here playing the victim. I am not playing anything, Rita cried out, her voice rising. I am broken, Michael. I am shattered. I made a mistake, and I will regret it for the rest of my life. But you are perfect, right? You never made any mistakes? You never hurt me? All those months you were away, not once did you think about how I felt? Not once did you consider that maybe I needed you here, not your money? Michael stepped closer, his voice dropping low. I called you every week, Rita. Every single week. I asked you how you were. I asked if you needed anything. I listened when you complained about the neighbors, about the children's school, about everything. And you know what you did? You lied. Every single time. You said you were fine. You said everything was okay. You said you missed me. And all the while, Paul was probably sitting right there next to you, waiting for me to hang up. Rita had no response to that. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. The aunties looked away. Even Mama Adana seemed momentarily uncertain. Then the front door opened, and everyone turned. Michael's younger brother, Chitty, walked in. He took one look at the gathering and immediately understood what was happening. His face darkened. He walked straight to Michael and said loudly enough for everyone to hear, I heard what happened. I spoke to Mr. Okafor next door. He told me everything. He told me Paul has been living here like a husband for months. Sleeping here, eating here, acting like the man of the house. And all of you knew. He pointed at the aunties, at Rita's sisters, at Mama Adana herself. You all knew. Mr. Okafor said he mentioned it to you. He said, looking at Mama Adana. He said he told you 3 months ago that something strange was happening, that Paul was spending too much time inside the house. And you told him to mind his business. You chose to protect Rita's affair instead of protecting my brother's marriage. Mama Adana's face went pale. That is not true. I did not know anything. Mr. Okafor does not lie, Chitty said coldly. Unlike the people in this room. The atmosphere shifted. The aunties looked guilty now, their eyes darting toward the door as if calculating escape routes. Rita's sisters suddenly found the floor very interesting. Mama Adana sat down heavily, her royal composure cracking. Michael looked at his wife, at the woman he had loved for 7 years, and felt nothing. Not anger. Not pain. Just emptiness. You did not just betray me, Rita. You made everyone around you complicit in that betrayal. You turned my home into a stage for your lies. You turned our marriage into a joke. Rita stood up, her voice desperate. Michael, please. I will do anything. I will go to therapy. I will cut off all contact with Paul. I will be the wife you deserve. Just give me another chance. Please. Think about the children. The children, Michael repeated softly. Yes. Let us think about the children. Let us think about what they will learn if I stay. They will learn that betrayal has no consequences. They will learn that vows are meaningless. They will learn that a man can sacrifice everything and be rewarded with humiliation. Is that what you want me to teach them? Michael, his daughter's small voice came from the hallway. Everyone turned. Both children stood there in their pajamas, clearly awakened by the raised voices. They looked confused and frightened. Why is everyone shouting? Michael walked over and knelt in front of them. Everything is okay. The adults are just talking. Go back to your room. I will come check on you in a minute. Are you and Mommy fighting? His son asked quietly. Michael hesitated, then nodded. Yes, but we will figure it out. I promise. The children left reluctantly. When they were gone, Michael stood and faced the room one final time. I am not making any decisions today, he said, but I want all of you to leave my house. Now, this is between me and Rita. Not you. Not the aunties. Not the village. Me and Rita. Mama Adana started to protest, but Chitty stepped forward. You heard him. Leave. Slowly, reluctantly, the women gathered their things and filed out. Mama Adana paused at the door and looked back at Michael. If you divorce her, she will suffer. People will talk. She will be labeled. Is that what you want? Michael met her eyes steadily. She should have thought about that before she invited another man into my bed. Mama Adana left without another word. The house fell silent again. Rita stood alone in the living room, crying quietly. Michael did not go to her. He did not comfort her. He simply walked to the guest room, locked the door, and sat on the bed. Outside, he heard Chitty's voice talking to Rita, low and firm. Michael did not need to hear the words to know what his brother was saying. The truth. The hard, unforgiving truth that no amount of tears could wash away. 3 days passed like months. Michael moved through the house like a ghost, occupying space but not really living in it. He slept in the guest room. He ate meals alone. He spoke to his children with forced cheerfulness, playing with them, helping with homework, tucking them into bed with stories that felt like lies, because how could he tell them about happy endings when his own story had none? Rita tried to approach him several times, but he would simply walk away, his silence more devastating than any words could be. On the 4th morning, Michael woke before dawn and sat on the edge of the bed, watching darkness give way to gray light. He had not come to Nigeria to make a decision. He had come to surprise his family, to hold his children, to remember what home felt like. But life had surprised him instead, and now he sat in a guest room in his own house, trying to figure out who he was without the identity he had built his entire adult life around. Husband, provider, protector. All of it felt like costumes now, clothes that no longer fit. He thought about his father, who had died when Michael was 17. His father had been a quiet man, strong but gentle, the kind of man who worked hard and loved harder. Michael remembered asking him once what made a good marriage. His father had smiled and said, "Trust, my son. Everything else, love, respect, intimacy, all of it is built on trust. Without trust, you have nothing but two people living separate lives under the same roof." Michael had trusted Rita completely. He had given her access to everything: his money, his home, his heart, his future. He had trusted her to be faithful, to be honest, to honor the vows they made in front of God and family. And she had taken that trust and shattered it so thoroughly that he did not know if the pieces could ever be found, much less put back together. He heard movement in the kitchen. Rita was awake, starting her morning routine. Michael showered, dressed, and walked out to find her preparing breakfast again. The same mechanical movements, the same hollow eyes. She looked up when he entered, hope flickering briefly across her face before dying when she saw his expression. "I need to go out today," Michael said. "I will be gone most of the day. Can you watch the children?" "Of course," Rita said quickly. "Michael, can we please talk? Even for just a few minutes?" "Not yet," he replied. "I am not ready." He left before she could respond, climbing into his car and driving with no destination in mind. He found himself at the church where they had gotten married, a small building with blue-painted walls and wooden pews that had witnessed countless unions and probably just as many dissolutions. The church was empty this early. Michael sat in the back row and stared at the altar where he had stood 7 years ago, young and hopeful and terrified, promising to love Rita in sickness and health, for richer or poorer, until death parted them. Pastor Ezekiel found him there an hour later. The old man moved slowly down the aisle, his cane tapping against the concrete floor. He sat beside Michael without asking permission, both of them staring forward in silence for several minutes. "I heard what happened," Pastor Ezekiel finally said. "I am sorry, my son." "Everyone is sorry," Michael said quietly. "But sorry does not fix anything. Sorry does not undo what was done. Sorry does not give me back the months I spent working myself to death while my wife was building a life with another man." "No," Pastor Ezekiel agreed. "Sorry does not do any of those things. But it is a beginning. Not for her. For you." Michael turned to look at the pastor. "What do you mean?" "I mean that forgiveness is not about giving someone else freedom," Pastor Ezekiel said. "It is about giving yourself freedom. Right now, you are trapped. Trapped by anger, by hurt, by betrayal. And you will stay trapped until you decide what you want your life to look like from this moment forward. Not what Rita wants. Not what her family wants. Not what the church wants. What you want." "I do not know what I want," Michael admitted. "I thought I knew. I thought I wanted a family, a marriage, a partnership. But all of that was a lie. So what do I want now? I do not know." "Then sit with that unknowing," the pastor said. "Sit with it until the answer comes. But do not make a decision from a place of rage or revenge. Make it from a place of clarity. Because whatever you decide, your children will live with those consequences too." Michael spent the rest of the day driving around the city, through neighborhoods he used to know, past landmarks that held memories now tinged with bitterness. He stopped at a roadside restaurant and ordered jollof rice he barely touched. He sat at a park and watched children play on rusty swings while their mothers gossiped on benches nearby. He went to a bar and nursed one beer for 3 hours while football played on a television no one was really watching. And somewhere during those wandering hours, clarity came. Not in a dramatic moment or a divine revelation, but in a quiet settling of truth in his chest. Michael realized that he had been asking himself the wrong question. The question was not, can I forgive Rita? Or should I stay for the children? The real question was much simpler and more terrifying. Can I live with a woman I no longer trust? Trust was not something that could be rebuilt with apologies or couples counseling or time. Trust was a foundation, and once it cracked, everything built on top of it became unstable. Michael could forgive Rita. Eventually, maybe years from now, he could reach a place where the anger faded and he could wish her well from a distance. But trust her again? Live with her? Sleep beside her? Build a future with her? No, that was impossible. Not because he was unforgiving, but because he was human. And humans cannot live in constant suspicion, checking phones, questioning absences, wondering if every smile is real or rehearsed. When Michael returned home that evening, the house was quiet. The children were already in bed. Rita sat in the living room, waiting, her hands folded in her lap like a student waiting for exam results. Michael stood in the doorway, looking at her, and he felt something unexpected. Not hatred, not even anger anymore. Just sadness. Sadness for what they could have been. Sadness for the years they had wasted. Sadness for his children who would grow up with divorced parents. But sadness, he realized, was better than living a lie. I have made my decision, Michael said. Rita stood up quickly, her face a mixture of hope and terror. Michael, please, before you say anything, let me just tell you that I will spend the rest of my life making this up to you. I will be the wife you deserve. I will never, ever hurt you again. Michael shook his head slowly. Rita, you cannot give me what I need. I can, she insisted, stepping toward him. Whatever you need, I will give it to you. Just tell me. Trust, Michael said simply. I need to be able to trust my wife. And I cannot trust you. Not anymore. Not ever again. And without trust, we have nothing. Rita's face crumbled. So that is it. You are giving up? Just like that? I am not giving up, Michael said. I am accepting reality. This marriage ended the day you brought Paul into our bed. We just did not know it yet. But I know it now. And I cannot pretend otherwise. What about the children? Rita cried. What about them? You are just going to break up their family? You are going to let them grow up in a broken home? They already live in a broken home, Michael said quietly. We just have not admitted it to them yet. But they are smart, Rita. They feel the tension. They see us avoiding each other. They hear us fighting. Staying together for their sake is not protecting them. It is teaching them that loveless marriages are normal. And I will not do that to them. Rita sank back onto the couch, sobbing. Michael watched her for a moment, then walked to the guest room. He pulled out his phone and called his lawyer, a man named Ademola who had helped him with property purchases in the past. Ademola answered on the third ring. Michael, my friend, how is America treating you? I am back in Nigeria, Michael said, and I need to file for divorce. There was a pause on the other end. I see. Can we meet tomorrow? Yes. First thing in the morning. Michael hung up and sat on the bed. He did not feel victorious. He did not feel relieved. He just felt tired, bone-deep tired, the kind of exhaustion that comes from carrying weight for too long and finally setting it down. His phone buzzed. A text from Chitty. How are you holding up? Michael typed back, I am filing for divorce tomorrow. Chitty's response came immediately. Good. You deserve better than this. We all do. Michael put the phone down and lay back on the bed, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling once more. In the room next door, he could hear Rita crying, the sound muffled but unmistakable. Part of him wanted to go to her, to comfort her the way he had done so many times before when she was sad or scared or overwhelmed. But that part of him, the part that loved her unconditionally, had died somewhere between New York and Lagos, between trust and betrayal, between the man he was and the man he was becoming. He closed his eyes and thought about his children sleeping peacefully down the hall, innocent and unaware that their world was about to change forever. He promised himself he would be there for them, would love them twice as hard to make up for the brokenness. He promised himself he would not let Rita's betrayal turn him bitter or cruel or closed off from ever loving again. He promised himself that he would rebuild, not the life he lost, but a new life, a better life, a life where trust was earned and honored and never taken for granted. And in that moment, lying in a guest room in his own house, Michael Richards made peace with his decision. Not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. Not because he wanted to, but because staying would destroy what was left of his soul. The decision was made. And tomorrow, the hard work of living with that decision would begin. The divorce took 6 months to finalize. 6 months of lawyers and paperwork and cold negotiations over who got what, who would keep the house, how custody would be divided. Rita fought him at first, pleading and bargaining and threatening, cycling through every emotion like someone searching for the key that would unlock his forgiveness. But Michael remained firm, unmoved, operating from a place beyond anger or bitterness. He simply wanted out, wanted freedom, wanted to start breathing again without the weight of betrayal crushing his chest. In the end, the settlement was fair, more than fair. Michael kept the house, which he immediately put up for sale. He could not live in those rooms anymore, could not walk past the bedroom where his marriage died, could not sit in the kitchen where Rita had cried false tears while her lover hid somewhere in the neighborhood. He gave Rita a generous financial package, enough to start over, enough that she could never claim he abandoned her or left her destitute. The children would split their time between both parents, though Michael made sure he was listed as the primary guardian. He would not let them grow up thinking betrayal had no consequences. Now, 1 year after that terrible homecoming, Michael stood in his new apartment, a modest 3-bedroom in a different part of the city, far from the compound where his old life had imploded. The space was smaller than the house, but cleaner somehow, unburdened by ghosts. His children's rooms were painted bright colors, filled with toys and books and laughter when they visited every other week. His own room was simple: a bed, a desk, a bookshelf, and a window that looked out over the city he was learning to see with new eyes. Michael had not returned to America. That surprised everyone, including himself. But somewhere during the divorce proceedings, he realized he did not want to go back to that life of double shifts and shared apartments and loneliness disguised as sacrifice. He wanted to be present, here, building something real. So he used his savings to start a small logistics company, connecting Nigerian businesses with international shipping partners. It was hard work, long hours, endless phone calls and negotiations, but it was his. And slowly, steadily, it began to grow. His children were thriving. That was the most important thing. His daughter still asked sometimes why mommy and daddy did not live together anymore, and Michael would kneel down and explain in simple terms that sometimes adults make mistakes, that sometimes love changes, that it was not her fault or her brother's fault, that both parents loved them more than anything in the world. She would nod, not fully understanding but trusting him enough to accept it. His son, older and more perceptive, asked fewer questions but watched Michael carefully, as if trying to learn how to be a man from the way his father handled pain. Michael had started going to therapy, something his brother Chitty had suggested and Michael had initially resisted. But sitting in that small office every Thursday afternoon, talking to Dr. Amara about trust and betrayal and rebuilding identity, had helped more than he expected. Dr. Amara never told him what to feel or how to heal. She simply gave him space to process, to grieve, to slowly piece together who Michael Richards was when he was not defined by someone else's choices. He had not dated anyone. The thought of opening himself up again, of making himself vulnerable, of trusting someone with his heart, felt impossible most days. But Dr. Amara said that was okay, that healing was not linear, that there was no timeline for when he should be ready. So Michael focused on work, on his children, on rebuilding the parts of himself that had been eroded by years of prioritizing everyone else's needs above his own. One Thursday afternoon, Michael was at a coffee shop reviewing contracts when he saw her. Rita. She walked in with a small child on her hip, his daughter trailing behind her, and for a moment their eyes met across the crowded room. She looked different, thinner, older. Her clothes were clean but worn, and there was a tiredness around her eyes that had not been there before. She hesitated, then walked over to his table. "Michael," she said quietly. "Hello, Rita," he replied, his voice neutral. "How are you?" "I am managing," she said, adjusting the child on her hip. "This is Chioma. She is 6 months old." Michael looked at the baby, then back at Rita, understanding dawning slowly. "Paul's child?" Rita nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "He left when he found out I was pregnant. Said he could not handle the responsibility. Said he never promised me anything. I have not seen him since." Michael felt something twist in his chest, not satisfaction exactly, but a grim acknowledgement of justice. "So he abandoned you the same way you thought I abandoned you." "It is not the same," Rita said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Michael, I know I do not deserve your sympathy or your help, but I need to tell you that I was wrong. About everything. I destroyed the best thing in my life because I was selfish and stupid and lonely. And now I am paying for it every single day." Michael looked at her for a long moment. Part of him wanted to feel vindicated, to enjoy her suffering the way she had caused his. But mostly he just felt sad. Sad for the woman she could have been. Sad for the child she now carried, innocent and blameless, born into the wreckage of her mother's choices. Sad for the life they could have built together if only she had been brave enough to communicate instead of betray. "I hope you find your way, Rita," Michael said finally. "I really do. Not for me. For our children. They deserve a mother who has healed from her mistakes." Rita nodded, tears streaming down her face now. "I am sorry, Michael. I will spend the rest of my life being sorry." "I know," he said, "but sorry does not change what happened. It just helps you live with it." She left without another word, walking out of the coffee shop with her 2 children, disappearing into the Lagos afternoon. Michael watched her go, and for the first time since that terrible day, he felt something close to peace. Not because Rita was suffering, but because he realized her suffering was not his responsibility. He had forgiven her, not in the sense of forgetting or excusing, but in the sense of releasing himself from the burden of her choices. She would carry her consequences. He would carry his healing. 6 months after that encounter, Michael's business had grown enough to hire 3 full-time employees. He had reconnected with old friends, started playing football on weekends again, even went to church occasionally, sitting in the back row and listening to Pastor Ezekiel's sermons with new ears. He was not the same man who had boarded that plane from New York full of excitement and hope. That man had died in a bedroom full of betrayal. But the man he was becoming was stronger, wiser, more careful with his trust, but not closed off from life. One evening, while picking up his children from Rita's apartment, he met her neighbor, a woman named Ngozi who was a teacher at his daughter's school. They talked for a few minutes about education and children and the weather, easy conversation that did not carry the weight of trauma or history. As Michael was leaving, Ngozi said, "Your children talk about you all the time. They are very proud of their father." Michael smiled. "I am proud of them too. Maybe we could get coffee sometime," Ngozi said, her tone casual, but her eyes hopeful. "Just as friends. It is nice to talk to someone who cares about children the way you do." Michael hesitated, old fears rising like smoke. But then he looked at his children playing nearby, resilient and happy despite everything they had been through, and he realized something important. They were not broken by his and Rita's divorce. They were learning from it. Learning that people make mistakes. Learning that consequences are real. Learning that their father was strong enough to walk away from what hurt him and brave enough to start over. "I would like that," Michael said to Ngozi. "Coffee sounds good." She smiled, and they exchanged numbers. Michael did not know if anything would come of it. Maybe they would just be friends. Maybe it would lead to something more. But for the first time in a year, the future felt like possibility instead of punishment. As Michael drove home with his children singing in the back seat, he thought about the man he used to be, the one who measured his worth by how much he could sacrifice, how much he could endure, how much pain he could absorb without breaking. That man had believed suffering was noble, that staying was always stronger than leaving, that love meant accepting whatever you were given. But Michael knew better now. Real love was not about endurance. It was about truth. It was about boundaries. It was about knowing your worth and refusing to settle for less than you deserved. It was about teaching your children, through your actions and not just your words, that betrayal has consequences, that trust is sacred, that walking away from what destroys you is not weakness but wisdom. The city lights flickered to life as evening descended, washing the streets in gold and amber. Michael glanced in the rearview mirror at his children, their faces lit up with joy, singing off-key to a song on the radio. They were his purpose now. Not revenge, not bitterness, not proving anything to Rita or Paul or anyone else. Just being present, being honest, being the kind of father who showed them that life could break you but did not have to destroy you. And as he pulled into his apartment complex, parking in the spot that now felt like home, Michael realized something profound. He had not come back to Nigeria to catch his wife cheating. He had come back to catch himself. To catch the man he was becoming before he lost himself completely in sacrifice that was never appreciated, in love that was never reciprocated, in trust that was never honored. Sometimes God does not answer prayers the way you expect. Sometimes he answers them by showing you what you needed to see, even when it breaks your heart. And sometimes the greatest miracle is not staying together, but finding the strength to walk away and rebuild. Michael Richards had rebuilt. And the life he was building now, brick by careful brick, was his own. Not perfect, not without scars, but real, honest, free. And that was more than enough. This story is not just about betrayal. It is about the courage it takes to face painful truth, to choose self-respect over comfort, and to teach those who depend on you that love without boundaries is not love at all. Michael lost a marriage, but he found himself. He lost a wife, but he kept his dignity. And most importantly, he showed his children that consequences are real, that trust matters, and that walking away from what destroys you is sometimes the bravest thing you can do. If this story touched you, if it reminded you that healing is possible even after devastating betrayal, then do not keep it to yourself. Subscribe to Storycave, where we bring you powerful, true human stories that need to be heard. Hit that subscribe button right now. Like this video. Share it with someone who needs to know they are not alone in their pain. Leave a comment telling us what this story meant to you. Because stories like Michael's, they save lives. They remind us that we are stronger than our worst moments. And your support keeps these stories alive, keeps these truths being told. Let us continue this journey together. Subscribe to Storycave today.